It's time to finish the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Turtle Power 5 color commander deck, which focuses on partnering with allies and buff your team. We have Big Mother Monster. It's a 0/0 artifact creature robot for 4. This creature enters with 2/1/1 counters on it. Whenever this creature attacks, double the number of 1/1 counters on it. When this creature dies, create a number of 1/1 colorless robots artifact creature tokens equal to the number of 1/1 counters on this creature. And the cost was 4, so that's pretty decent for, that amount of mana. It might only start out with a 2 but it's doubling every time it attacks, and you create tokens when it dies. Coin of Mastery. It's an artifact for 4. Each creature you control enters with an additional 1/1 counter on it for each mana from an artifact source spent to cast it. And you can tap to create a treasure token. The reminder text says it's an artifact with tap, sacrifice this token, add 1 mana of any color. So basically you can tap this to make treasure tokens, and then the treasure tokens will help you tap and sacrifice to play your creatures, and then those will add 1/1 counters to the stuff you're casting. Exploding Barrel. It's an artifact for 3. Tap to add 1 mana of any color. Put a pressure counter on this artifact. Pay 8, tap, sacrifice this artifact. It deals 20 damage to target creature. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each pressure counter on this artifact. Activate only as a sorcery. So, 8's a lot to do, but you're dealing 20 damage, and, there's the mana reducer of 1 less for each pressure counter on it, which you add by tapping for mana, so that wouldn't be unrealistic to, maybe get paid the 20 damage done for, 3 or less, maybe even free. Mole Module. It's a 6/6 artifact, a vehicle for 5. Has Menace. Whenever this vehicle deals combat damage to a player, mill 4 cards. You may put a permanent card from among them onto the battlefield. Has a crew cost of 2. So, a 6/6 was Menace for 5 seems decent. Where it's a vehicle, you have to crew, and you're milling 4 when it deals combat damage, so kind of a trade-off. Like, yes, you can get a permanent out of those cards, but I don't like sending stuff to my graveyard more than I have to, especially if your opponent has something to exile your graveyard. Roadkill Rodney. It's a 2/1 artifact creature, a robot for 2. Squad 3. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may pay 3 any number of times. When this creature enters, create that many tokens that are copies of it. Has Death Touch. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, create a mutagen token. So I mean, a 2-1 with Death Touch for 2 seems pretty decent. And, where it has Squad 3, you can make as many copies as you have extra mana to spend. So if you don't have anything else in your hand that's worth playing, or if you just want to make a bunch of 2-1 Death Touch chump blockers, you can play this guy and then make however many copies as you'd like. Big Apple, 3 a.m. So land, this land enters tapped. As it enters, choose a color. Tap, add 1 mana of the chosen color. Or you can pay 5 and tap, create a 1/1 black rat creature token for each opponent you have. So, I mean, 5 mana seems like a lot to create a rat token for each opponent. If you only have 1 opponent, you're only creating 1 token for 5 mana. Now, obviously, the more opponents, the more tokens, but even if you have 3 or 4 opponents, you're potentially getting 3 or 4 tokens for 5 mana. Not quite the 1 token for 1 mana. I'd expect to see, have something that creates tokens. Hidden Hideout. This land enters tapped. Tap to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's identity. 2, tap, or pay 2 mana. Tap, target creature you control with a counter on it gains lifelink until end of turn. So, I mean, that's kind of cool that in addition to tapping for mana, you can give a creature with a counter, 1/1 counter, lifelink for 2. Together Forever. It's an enchantment for 2 planes. Whenever this enchantment enters, support 2. The reminder text says put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. And you can pay 1, choose target creature with a counter on it. When that creature dies this turn, return that card to its owner's hand. And where you don't have to tap the enchantment, you're just paying the mana. You can do that as many times as you want and have mana for. So, the ability to return creatures to your hand if they have a counter on it and are dying, that seems pretty helpful. Vanquish the Horde. It's a sorcery for 6 and 2 planes. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. Destroy all creatures. I mean, 8 normally would be a lot for a board wipe, but it also is cheaper. Well, 1 generic cheaper for each creature on the battlefield. So you could, if there were 6 creatures on the battlefield, you could potentially just play it for the 2 planes. Wave Goodbye. It's a sorcery for 2 and 2 islands. Return each creature without a 1/1 counter to its owner's hand. So where this deck has so many things that adds 1/1 counters, theoretically you could just return creatures your opponents control to their hands, which if they don't have anything that gives them no maximum hand size, that potentially has them discarding cards if they don't have enough mana to play the stuff you're returning to their hands. Blasphemous Act. It's a sorcery for 8 and a mountain. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. Blasphemous Act deals 13 damage to each creature. So, again, another expensive border wipe. It's 9, but then it costs 1 generic less for each creature on the battlefield, like the one that was, planes. In this case, it's dealing damage to the creatures versus saying destroy, so it kind of gets around indestructible because indestructible says things that say destroy, and this doesn't say destroy. Where it does have the mana reduction, yes, it might be 8 in amount, but if there's 8 creatures on the battlefield, you're just paying a single mound. Biogenic Ooze. It's a creature ooze. It's a 2/2 for 3 and 2 forest. When this creature enters, create a 2/2 green ooze creature token. At the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 counter on each ooze you control. And you can pay 1 and 3 forests, create a 2/2 green ooze creature token. So, it's a creature. When it enters, you create the ooze token, and whenever you want, you can pay 1 and 3 forests to create more ooze tokens. And at your end step, you're putting 1/1 counters on all oozes, so this has the potential to snowball real quick, assuming there's no removal or board wipes happening. Obviously, you'd want some kind of protection for your creatures, because that seems like it'd be something targeted where you're adding tokens, you're putting 1/1 counters on your creatures, given it's a specific creature type, ooze, but still that seems like a high value card that would get targeted for removal. Slash clone, and it has another name in the picture that's Steelbane Hydra. I'm guessing it's because it's based off that card, but just has a different name. It's a 0/0 creature, a turtle hydra for X and 2 forests. This creature enters with X 1/1 counters on it. You can pay 2 in a forest, remove a 1/1 counter from this creature. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. So you can play a big guy, remove a counter, and destroy a enchantment or artifact. And then with how many things add 1/1 counters, you can negate removing the counters to destroy stuff by adding more counters to that guy. Heralds of Shredder, and this is another one of the cards with another name in the picture. It's Vigor. This is a 6/6 creature, an elemental incarnation for 3 and 3 forest. Has trample. If damage would be dealt to another creature you control, prevent that damage. Put a 1/1 counter on that creature for each 1 damage prevented this way. When Herald of Shredder is put into the graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's graveyard. So 3 and 3 forest might seem like a lot, but it's a 6/6 with trample. It's preventing damage to other creatures, putting 1/1 counters on those creatures, and if it would be put into the graveyard, you're shuffling into your library. So basically the only way to get rid of this guy is to exile it. I mean, that seems pretty good. Aggro Amalgam, and it's another um, one of those cards with a different name in the for the card. This was originally Vortious Hydra. It's a 0/1 creature, a Hydra for X and 2 forests. Has trample. This creature enters with X/1/1 counters on it. When this creature enters, choose one. Double the number of 1/1 counters on this creature, or this creature fights target creature you don't control. So, very situational on whether you'd want to double the 1/1 counters or have this guy fight a creature you don't control. Obviously, fighting creatures you don't control would be an advantage in certain situations, especially if you don't have more fight cards in the deck. But otherwise, doubling, your 1/1 counters, like let's say you pay 10 for X, this guy enters as a 10/11. Oh, you double the 1/1 counters. Actually, he's 20/21 instead. I mean, that seems pretty powerful. And then slapping trample on it, you swing with a 20/21. They have to block with something big or multiple creatures, or they're taking a lot of damage. Assassin's Trophy. It's a instant for a swamp and a forest. Destroy target permanent and opponent controls. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Humongous Fungus, and this is another one of the cards with a different name. Corpacjack Menace. It's a 4/4 creature fungus for 2, a swamp, and a forest. If one or more 1/1 counters would be put on a creature you control, twice that many 1/1 counters are put on it instead. Which, is pretty helpful in a deck that cares about 1/1 counters. Chrome Lantern. I love this card because it's an artifact for 3 that lands you control have tap to add 1 mana of any color. So therefore, there you go. You're fixing your mana in a 5-color deck, and it taps to add 1 mana of any color. So it's a mana rock that also helps with fixing colors. Cinder Glade. It's a land, mountain forest. The reminder text says tap to add a mountain or a forest. This land enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. City of Brass. Whenever this land becomes tapped, it deals 1 damage to you. Tap to add 1 mana of any color. Dragon Skull Summit. So this land enters tapped unless you control a swamp or a mound. Tap to add a swamp or a mound. Exotic Orchard. It's a land that taps to add 1 mana of any color that land an opponent controls could produce. Fabled Passage. It's a land. Tap, sacrifice this land, search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Then if you control 4 or more lands, untap that land. Normally, I'm not big on these kind of sacrifice or search lands because it feels like you have the ability to put a better land in its place, but it also helps thin your deck so you have better draws. So I could go either way. Grand Coliseum. This land enters tapped. Tap to add a colorless, or tap to add 1 mana of any color. This land deals 1 damage to you. Hinterland Harbor. This land enters tapped unless you control a forest or an island. Tap to add a forest or an island. Rain Slicked Copse. It's a land, forest, island. The reminder text is tap to add a forest or a island. This land enters tapped. Has cycling 2, which is you pay 2, discard this card to draw a card. Kind of interesting that they add the whole cycling thing onto fetchable land. Rootbound Crag. This land enters tapped unless you control a mountain or a forest. Tap to add a mountain or a forest. Smoldering Marsh. It's a land, swamp, mountain. The reminder text is tap to add a swamp or a mountain. This land enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Soden Verju. It's a land, forest, island. The reminder text is tap to add a forest or an island. This land enters tapped unless you control 2 or more lands. Spire Garden. So this land enters tapped unless you have 2 or more opponents. Tap to add a mountain or a forest. Sunken Hollow. Land, an island, swamp. The reminder text is tap to add a island or a swamp. This land enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Undergrowth Stadium. This land enters tapped unless you have 2 or more opponents. Tap to add a swamp or a forest. Vernal Fen. It's a land, swamp, forest. The reminder text says tap to add a swamp or a forest. This land enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Lita, Little Orphan Amphibian. It's a 2/1 legendary creature, a mutant ninja turtle for 1 in the plains. Alliance. Whenever another creature you control enters, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Put a 1/1 counter on Alita. Create a food token. The reminder text says it's an artifact with tapped 2 mana. Tap and sacrifice this token. You gain 3 life. Or scry 1. Mona Lisa Science Geek. It's a 1/3 legendary creature, a lizard mutant for 2 in a forest. Has reach. Tap to add X mana of any 1 color, where X is Mona Lisa's power. Lessons from Life. It's a sorcery for 2, a forest and an island. Draw 3 cards. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. Everything Pizza, which seems like a pretty obvious nod to the Ninja Turtles theme because they love pizza. It's an artifact food for 2. Whenever this artifact enters, search your library for basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. You can pay 2 plains, a island, a swamp, a mountain, and a forest. Tap, sacrifice this artifact. Target player gains 3 life and draws a card. Each of your opponents discards a card. This artifact deals 3 damage to any target. Put 3 1/1 counters on up to 1 target creature. So, I mean, you're searching for a basic library, and if you have 2 generic and W Berg, you can sacrifice it to do 5 different things. You know, you're gaining life and drawing a card yourself, because presumably you're going to target yourself. You can, each of your opponents will discard a card, and you can do 3 damage to any target, and then you can put 3 1/1 counters on a creature. That seems pretty good, but also balanced, considering it's 2 W Berg. Escape Tunnel. Tap, sacrifice this land, search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Tap, sacrifice this land, target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked. Turtle Lair. It's a land that you can tap to add a colorless, or you can tap to add 1 mana of any color, spend this mana only to cast a ninja or turtle spell. Or you can pay 3, tap, target ninja or turtle can't be blocked this turn. Marauding Mutagen. It's another card with a different card name in the picture. Acidic Slime. It's a 2/2 creature, a news for 3 and 2 forest. Has Death Touch. When this creature enters, destroy target artifact, enchantment, or land. I had one of those in a constructed deck back maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Kind of fun to, destroy something as it enters, and it has Death Touch. Cultivate. It's a sorcery for 2 in a forest. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Reveal those cards, put 1 onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, then shuffle. So obviously good for ramp. Harmonize. It's a sorcery for 2 and 2 forests. Draw 3 cards. So card draw in green, that's kind of cool. I'm used to card draw being in blue a little bit more often, but I guess green has some of it. Arcanine Signet. It's an artifact for 2. Tap to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Soul Ring. And it's basically a picture of a sign that's a pizza. It's an artifact for 1. You tap to add 2 colorless. Kind of a staple in any commander deck. Ashes Barrens. It's a land that taps to add 1 colorless, or it has basic land cycling. You pay 1, discard this card, search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Commander Tower. Another staple in any commander deck. It's a land that taps to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Evolving Wild. It's a land that you tap and sacrifice this land, search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So a slightly worse version of Fabled Passage. Again, one of those things that I'm kind of on the fence about, because you could theoretically put better land in that card slot, but you're also thinning your deck. Passive Ancestry. This land enters tapped. Tap to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's identity. When this mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, scry 1. The reminder text says, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card on the bottom. So you get to choose top or bottom, really, but it just not worded that way. Thriving Grove. To land, this land enters tapped. As it enters, choose a color other than green. Tap to add a forest or 1 mana of the chosen color. And then it looks like we're gonna have maybe all of those for the different colors, because we have Thriving Isle. This land enters tapped. As it enters, choose a color other than blue. Tap to add a island or 1 mana of the chosen color. Thriving Moor. This land enters tapped. As it enters, choose a color other than black. Tap to add a swamp or 1 mana of the chosen color. Vibrant Cityscape. Tap, sacrifice this land, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So basically, Evolving Wilds with a different name, but it doesn't show that in the picture, so I guess they just have some cards that aren't different, the same with a different name, but then it's just a reprint maybe. Now we have some of the basic lands. We have 1 plains, 1 island, 1 swamp, 1 island, and 1 forest. And then it repeats 1 of each. Until we get to forest, which had 3. So it seems kind of odd that they didn't have them all together. They kind of had them in W